Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. There is hypocrisy, and then there's the hypocrisy of Republicans in Texas. Come September, every classroom in the state of Texas could be required to display the Ten Commandments. Ironically, Republicans there had votes on the bill on Saturday and Sunday in violation of the Fourth Commandment, as noted by Democrat James Talarico.
What is the Fourth Commandment?
Keep the Sabbath.
Part of keeping the Sabbath holy is not working on the Sabbath.
That is, yeah.
What day is the Jewish Sabbath?
It is on Saturday.
And what day is it today?
It is Saturday. Here we are.
The Christian Sabbath is what day?
Sunday, in honor of the day that Jesus rose from the dead.
And we're scheduled to give this bill a final vote on what day of the week?
It's ironic, isn't it?
Would you be willing to postpone your bill so that we're not breaking the Ten Commandments by working on the Jewish or Christian Sabbath?
I love that you said that because
you're saying that you'd rather tell people to follow the Ten Commandments than follow it yourself?
I would have rather have had this bill passed the other day when it was time.
The Republican on the defensive there is Representative Candy Noble. She and other bill supporters argue that the Ten Commandments and teachings of Christianity more generally are core to U.S. history. That Christian nationalist message has gained traction in recent years as part of a broader movement that considers church-state separation a myth. Never mind, of course, the Constitution or recent court rulings. In Louisiana, a federal court recently struck down a similar push to display the Ten Commandments. But back to Texas. Democrat Representative James Talarico focused on the hypocrisy of the Republican effort.
We as a legislature are about to force every teacher in the state to post the Ten Commandments in their classrooms.
If
Do
they are
members
donated.
of the Texas legislature follow the Ten Commandments?
So again, this bill is about honoring our historical, educational, and judicial heritage with the displaying of the Ten Commandments.
The Ninth Commandment is thou shalt not bear false witness. Are you aware of any legislators who have lied about anything?
That is, you know, there might be one coming up in a minute if you keep talking. We'll see.
There might be a liar coming up in a minute if you keep talking, said Noble. What an absolute rhymes with witch. Good grief. The argument that some Republicans have pushed forward is that the Ten Commandments poster is being displayed only for historical purposes. The GOP lawmakers say it's similar to the teachings of the Pledge of Allegiance. Just because kids learn about it doesn't mean kids are required to believe we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. But most Republicans can't seem to draw that distinction between the historical legacy of the Ten Commandments and the Christian nationalist desire that all Americans follow the Ten Commandments. So Democrat James Talarico, who's a former teacher and is finishing master's work in divinity school, is having a field day calmly hammering Representative Noble and other Christian nationalist Republicans.
The Seventh Commandment is thou shalt not commit adultery.
Yes?
Do you think that members of the legislature should focus more on trying to follow the Ten Commandments rather than telling others to follow them?
Maybe they didn't have them posted.
It is incumbent on all of us to follow God's law.
Whether one thinks it is incumbent on all of us or not, Talarico's note about the Seventh Commandment was important, because the fact is that several Republican state lawmakers who support this bill have reportedly engaged in adultery. One Republican leader just a few years ago was caught in a sordid love triangle involving another Republican married lawmaker and a campaign consultant. The affair reportedly featured graphic and obscene text messages as well as threats of retaliation. The Ten Commandments bill moving through the Texas State House requires every classroom to visibly display a poster size at least 16 by 20 inches. The poster can only include the language that is laid out in the bill. No other similar Ten Commandment posters may be displayed. 4 years ago, the Texas legislature required schools to display posters that say, "In God We Trust." And last year, the Texas Board of Education approved Bible-infused teaching materials. Texas is one of 16 states where lawmakers have pursued the Ten Commandments bill. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled against a similar Kentucky law in 1980, but supporters in Texas and across the country believe that the current makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court could lead to a different outcome. And a lot of legal analysts are watching to see what the Supreme Court does with that Louisiana court ruling that struck down their law requiring schools to display the Ten Commandments. In Texas, opponents of this bill have noted the commandments are irrelevant to classes like math and could prompt questions that are not age appropriate to some kids, such as what does adultery mean? The teachers union opposes the bill because members believe it violates the principle of separation of church and state. James Talarico, though, at age 36, has become one of the most popular voices opposing the Republican bill, in part because of Talarico's mild manner and his Christian religious background. Talarico told reporters, "My faith means more to me than anything, but I don't believe the government should be forcing religion onto any American citizen, especially our children." Hear, hear. By the way, Trump White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is now flailing as the GOP's hypocrisy on the federal debt spooks bond markets.
This bill saves $1.6 trillion for the American taxpayer. It saves more than any bill that has ever passed Capitol Hill has. In fact, by double. The next bill saved $800 billion. This bill saves $1.6 trillion.
While it's true the bill cuts Medicaid, student loan funding, climate change projects, and other spending, the bill costs the U.S. government even more through tax cuts for the wealthy and extra defense spending. Altogether, the bill will borrow $3.1 trillion we don't have, and the borrowing could go even higher.
So even without this tax bill, the deficit was essentially going to keep going up over the next 10 years, maybe come down a little bit at the very end, but essentially up. Then you add in the tax bill that we just talked about, including the fact that they've played the same gimmick they played in 2017, setting up some of these things to expire, and that would make the deficit impact higher, but not as high as if you made all this stuff permanent. The record of Congress, stuff almost always gets made permanent, and so somewhere along in here, they will make this permanent and will end up on this line. And this line is something like $25 trillion of additional debt.
If we had spoken maybe 3 or 4 months ago, at the end of last year maybe, and somebody had said, when does the US really need to confront its debt issues? A lot of people would have said, you've got another decade or so. Increasingly, it feels like this administration is going to have to confront the problems because the bond market has lost patience.
This is a very good bill for the American people, the American taxpayer.
Top 20% of Americans, you're going to get roughly a 3.7% increase in your after-tax income, really all from these tax cuts. But if you go all the way to the bottom and everything in between essentially leads you to the bottom, if you're in the bottom 20%, you actually lose $800. Why do you lose $800? You get a very small tax cut, and you get a very large cut in Medicaid and these other benefits that we were just talking about that affects the 20% disproportionately.
Check out that video at the link below. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.